This movie, yeah, it's certainly a strange one because normally, movies that have such characters in them, that does not result in much comedy. You know, I mean, and on all things considered, the context of everything is indeed comic. As in, no, I mean the other way around. It is indeed, brutal, etc., and it could end in um, gruesome end, etc. But you know, um, and indeed there were a lot of elements that weren't exactly, fully comic. Elements that I have no idea why they were there for. Like say, John Hurt's character. I'm not sure why he has some of the earlier lines. They are pretty awful, but then his face, the way he looks in response to some other people's lines, w- uh, is pretty comic. What I was going to say, I just don't know why. So he has some of the earlier lines, but otherwise, it just overall thought the movie comes across as comic on average. When they were explaining how they did the gambling at that casino and such. It's like a story that is trying to tell something, but that ends up not telling anything. So in that sense, it's funny in its own right. Then we get something and everything that's trying to tell something as well. Never actually tells anything. What the most comic really isn't the things that really they focus on so much, Although when he was having full blown hallucinations at the end, that was that was funny. I mean, it's pretty convincing. I don't know why one thing his former wife would suddenly appear there out of nowhere, but I don't know. It was still funny though until we finally find out that all those other people weren't really there. They're outside and just the camera pans to them, but only after lots of time has passed that establishes his hallucination firmly. And there's that one bit where there's some sort of drivers apparently standing up waiting for some reason, and he actually exchanges them in his mind. He exchanges one with another because he hates one more than another. So the comedy though lies in the script. So it's clearly most of it at least is comic. I mean, just the way everything is, the expectations and everything. Um, and as much as John Hurt's face was often funny, and some of his lines were as well, but I don't get why some of his earlier lines were there. Yeah. Um. Otherwise, though, it is quite a difference from most. If you took out John Hurt's lines and you kept everything else in for a gangster movie, this is interesting. Like Guy Ritchie supposedly does do comic gangster movies, but not really, in my opinion. They're they're not really funny. There's like little bits, little nuggets, but not really beyond that. It's really nothing in comparison to this whole thing. I mean, I'm assuming, yeah, it's kind of mislabeled. One of the genres there was thriller, and I'm assuming yes, people watching this as a thriller are going to be disappointed, as of course some of the people were at the end there when he decided to let him go. But that's the whole point of it. It's how there's this balloon that inflates and then deflates again, and that's part of the comedy as well. Um, but ultimately, I don't know why there were some parts like I don't see a reason for Winston's character to have been so aggressive in some parts, because then he wasn't aggressive at the end in particular. So I'm not sure why he was at the beginning necessarily. Um, but it was still, I mean, interesting. The way it began as well was pretty cool. Him lying on the floor there with some song playing and really depressed. So, as far as these movies go, I got to say, like there were only some elements that didn't seem to be either interesting or funny necessarily, but only some. It's like sort of the reverse of Guy Ritchie's movies, where there you got only a few elements that are funny, truly, but most is just violent and such. Whereas here is the other way around, which, in my opinion, is a better ratio, really. I don't generally watch such movies for the violence. I watch mainly for the story. Now, the story here isn't exactly the most riveting. So the point of it, though, is, of course, in the script, in the comedy of the script. Not so much. I mean, the characterization, I guess one could say as well. They were all sort of interesting. Sure, they were certainly all their own characters. This was about a decade before John Hurt died, so sort of didn't, but um, it's also interesting to know that this is what he did near his V for Vendetta filming. Not quite the same role, but thereabouts, I suppose. Yeah. It was actually more involved here. I don't think he was so involved in the other movie. So yeah, I mean, there are certainly less characters here. But yeah, some of his lines, I'm not sure why they were there, and Winston's aggression wasn't unneeded mostly, really. I don't see the point of it unless it's to contrast between his aggression and non-aggression later on, but really it doesn't work like that in real life. I'm not sure if they were all, I don't know, I suppose they were really trying to go for any realistic representation here, but doesn't really work like that in real life. So I don't see the point of it in a movie either way. I mean, even if it's fictional, it sort of took the comedy out of it, as did Hertz lines, some of them at least. You know, but most of the script is quite funny otherwise, it's not like, I suppose it's a bit difficult, because of those unwanted elements, but otherwise, yeah, it was quite weird, that's for sure. I don't think there's many movies that are like this, but maybe there should be, in the sense that instead of going, it's sort of like the anti Reservoir Dogs in this sense, but as opposed to most of these movies which really go ahead with if they've kidnapped someone, they just it's sort of very expected. They don't even try to do something different. This certainly does, and difference is interesting. It's just that if only there were those elements, but otherwise the difference is interesting, and it subverts expectations. That's what's so interesting. That's what's really, it's almost a parody of gangster movies, and that does make it interesting, certainly. Yeah. Apparently, the director didn't do anything else for a whole decade since then. The movie after this still had Keanu Reeves in it for some reason, and it's a romantic Comedy, I think so. It's not very relevant, but yeah, strange.